Hold on. Salamun alaikum.
Walaikum
So,
assalam.
you ready to get our class going? So, I got a really interesting topic for you today. So, I want to talk about Ibrahim, and I know this is going to spark some discussion. I know it's going to spark your mind. So, the idea is, well, I'll save the idea in a second. I'll explain the idea. I want to show you the connections first. So, this is going to be referencing the story of Ibrahim in chapter 6. That's where we're going to start at. So, it's going to be in chapter 6, verse 74. Well, we're going to start at 74, read up to 76, and then we're going to connect it with something else. So it's chapter 6, verse 74 to start with.
What made you
So,
pick this one today? Can I just
well, yeah, because I'll tell you kind of where I'm going, and then I think you'll get the idea as soon as I say it.
okay.
I'm exploring the idea of the nighttime, or even darkness, being like a spiritual mother. So I'm exploring. Yeah, see, I knew you were gonna like. I knew
Like
you
the
were gonna
first
like
thing you say, I'm like,
that. I told you. I said I knew this was going to spark your mind.
okay.
Yes, because I think darkness, the idea of darkness, can be positive or negative, right? Um, it just depends, right, on the person and how it's utilized, right? But I think if we look at Ibrahim's story, we find the idea of darkness to be necessary for a spiritual rebirth. So it becomes like the nighttime, or the darkness becomes like a spiritual mother. So we're going to trace some of these connections. And I'll explain more as we look at the connections. So 674, he starts off telling the story of Ibrahim. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آزَرَ. And when Ibrahim said to his father Azar, أَتَتَّخِذُ أَصْنَامًا آلِهَةً, do you take idols as gods? إِنِّي أَرَاكَ وَقَوْمَكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Truly, I see you and your people in manifest or clear error. Then he says, وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And likewise we show Ibrahim the dominion of the heavens and the earth, وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ, and so that he would be of those who have certainty. Okay, so now before I read this next verse, he starts off kind of like having a spiritual crisis, basically, because he confronts his people and he's like, you taking these idols as gods, I see you and your people to be in manifest error. So like he starts off like breaking away from like these traditional, like inherited assumptions of his people, right? And then when you get to verse 40, or I'm sorry, 76, he says, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا. So the wording here is when the night covered him, or when the night concealed him. Okay, but what's really interesting and really beautiful and very poetic actually about this verse. See, we have to, I think, like the vibe that I've kind of been on more and more lately is like we have to read the Quran in a poetic way. I think too many times when we read the Quran, we read it in a very technical, like rule-based way. That's the way that we were taught. But I think the Quran conveys its meanings in a very poetic way. Reading the Quran is almost like studying the best and most beautiful artwork, right?
Yeah.
When you study a piece of art, it's not necessarily meant to tell you like all of the conclusions step by step, right? But it gives you like these wordings and these images that are like very compressed, and like brings all these like meanings to your mind, right? Through the associations that they bring about. It's very aesthetically appealing, and that's why Allah tells us actually in another place. He says, Allah, he says, "Alladina yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsanahu." Those who listen to the statement and they follow the most beautiful of it, the most beautiful of it, right? He didn't say they followed the most fearful of it, or the most correct of it, or the most rational of it. He said the most beautiful of it. So he draws our attention to the aesthetic value of it, right? So this phrase here, when he says about Ibrahim, the night covered him or concealed him, the word that's used is the word Jannah. That's what's being translated as cover or concealed. Jannah.
Oh,
Jannah. Yeah, exactly. It's the same root that we get the word jinn from, that we get the word Jannah, meaning what they translate as paradise. And interestingly, and this is where we're gonna start putting these connections together. Interestingly, it's also the root of the word for an embryo or a fetus. So the singular for that in Arabic is janeen, which the singular isn't in the Quran, but the plural is. So the plural is ajinna, ajinna. Okay, let's look. I'm going to show you that verse real quick. This is in 53. So this is going to be 53, I think 32. Yeah, 53, 32.
yeah.
Well, in 53:32, he says, الذين يجتنبون كبائر الإثم والفواحش إلا اللمم. So if you just get to the point in the verse where he says, where he speaks about you were fetuses in the wombs or the bellies of your mothers. Do you see that part?
What number's that?
That's verse 32. 53, verse 32.
Oh, 53:32. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I do that all the time.
Oh, the star.
Yep. Surah An-Najm, 53, verse 32.
Oh, yeah. Those who avoid grave sins and foul acts.
hmm
Those
You
that
get to the
make.
point in the verse, you see the point in the verse where he speaks about when you are when you were fetuses, or they might translate as embryos in the bellies of your mothers. You see that part?
Yeah, it just says from your hiding places in your mother's wombs. They've put
Oh,
hiding.
see, from your hiding places. But the reason they translate it like that is because the word in Arabic is ajinna, but it's speaking about the baby, either as an embryo or a fetus, depending on what stage, being concealed and hidden in the darkness of the womb, right? Or in the
Right.
darkness of the bellies of your mothers. So what's interesting is these two words, the word that's used for Ibraaheem, when the night covered him and concealed him, is the word Jannah, and it's the same word used here for referring to being concealed within the bellies of your mothers, Ajinna. It's the same root word. Okay. Now, but someone might say, well, that doesn't necessarily tell us for sure that these should be connected, but there is another interesting connection that pulls these two places together. So, in order to see this connection, let's jump back over to 6 real quick. 676, and let's look at something real quick in order for us to put this all together.
Just say it.
So 676, right? This is where he says the night covered him, Jannah, concealed him, uses the same word. And then look at how his journey here after the night covered him, look at how it went through 3 stages. First one, Ra'a Kawkaba. He saw a kawkab, a star or a planet, or however they translate it, right? And then the next verse, 77, the beginning of it, he saw the moon,
Mm.
right? And then the verse 78, he saw the sun.
Oh, yeah.
So it went through 3 stages. And then on verse 79, he says, Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lilladhi fatara samawati wal ard. I turned my face to the one who created the heavens and the earth. Okay, so let's think about where we're at now, okay? Because we want to connect this. There's one more place we're going to go that's going to put this all together. So, number one, when Ibrahim had like this spiritual crisis with his people, Allah describes the night covering him, Jannah alayhi, Jannah, and he uses the word Jannah specifically, which is the same word that is used in Surah 53:32 to reference the baby being concealed in the in the bellies of their mothers, right? And then here we find that after the night concealed him, we find that it went through 3 stages. It went through 3 stages, right? So it went through seeing a kokab, it went through seeing the moon, it went through seeing the sun, and then he was spiritually reborn. by saying, I turn my face to, right? But what's interesting, okay, the reason I'm emphasizing three stages is now let's connect this to chapter 39, verse 6. 39, verse 6. If you want to, you go ahead and read that real quick.
He created you all from a single being from which he made its mate. He gave you four kinds of livestock in pairs. He created you in your mother's wombs in one stage after another in threefold depths of darkness. Yeah.
Read
Such as
oh, that's good. Fi dhulumatin thalath, in three darknesses. So he describes you being in the wombs of your mothers as three stages of darkness.
mm,
So if you put those three verses together, he uses the word Jannah, right? For Ibrahim to the night covering him. Then in the wombs, in the bellies of your mothers, he calls that a Jinnah, being concealed. And then when you look at Ibrahim, he went through three stages, right? He looked at the Kawkab, and when it set, he said, I don't love those who set. And he looked at the moon, and when it set, he said, if my Lord doesn't guide me, I will be of the lost. Then he looked at the sun, and then when it set, he said, I'm free from what you worship. I turned my face to the creator of the heavens and the earth. So he went through three stages, and Allah mentions in the wombs, there's three stages of darkness. So when you
mm,
put those pieces together, that's why I said the night perhaps is a spiritual mother. Darkness could be a spiritual mother. That when you pass, and if you think about the baby in the womb, the baby is literally going from darkness to light when it's
mm.
born, right? When it's born, it literally is going to the light, right? To the light of the world.
Yeah, and it also is the darkness to the light, the way in which he's put the order, the first the star, then the moon, then the sun. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, good point. I didn't even think about that
So
because it
go
goes
to the
to,
shadow before you
yeah,
get the enlightenment. And
before you get the enlightenment.
you know what else just popped to me too is just ever since we've spoken actually from day one, this has been I suppose a theme throughout. I remember in our first video together we spoke about my journey and how I went in the cave, remember? And then you were saying, oh, you had to go in the darkness to find the light. Do you remember? So
Yeah, yeah.
it links in. It's
It
funny that
links all, yeah, it links all together. And it's a very organic, spiritual, kind of like natural way of thinking about one's spiritual journey. And it also teaches us to some degree, to embrace the darkness, which is basically what you're saying. You have to go into the darkness to get to the light, because most of the time we're taught to think of darkness as bad. Especially we see
mm,
different verses in the Quran that says, for example, Allahu waliyu ladina amanu. Allah is the supporter, protector, ally of those who have believed. Yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila nur. He brings them from darknesses to light. So the way that people, I think, usually think about this is that first of all, something bad, and it's like a one-time process. So like he brings you from darkness to light. You were in darkness, now you're in light. But I don't think it necessarily has to be like that. Number one, I think darkness is a necessary stage for growth. Let's go back to chapter 6. Let's look at this. How interesting this is. SubhanAllah, how all this connects together. So we go back to chapter 6, and now we look at verse 59. So
mm-hmm.
chapter 6, verse 59, he says, وَعِنْدَهُ مَفَاتِحُ الْغَيْبِ لَا يَعْلَمُهَا إِلَّا هُ. And with him is the keys of the unseen, which none knows except for him. وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. And he knows what's in the land and the sea. وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. And no leaf falls except he knows it. وَلَا حَبَّةٍ فِي ظُلُمَاتِ الْأَرْضِ. Nor any seed in the darknesses of the earth. He
Mm,
references, and look, subhanAllah, it's in the same chapter that he references Ibrahim as Jannah alayhi layl, the night covered him.
Wait, I need to think. Wait.
Go ahead, think.
I just was thinking about the seed in the darkness and the new moon, that we're approaching the new moon in Cancer, which is literally the womb and like the most potent water place there is, pertaining to mother, and um, and what that means, nourishment and whatnot. That's crazy. But
That's
it's just,
interesting.
and like the seed, that's in like esotericism, like the seed is the new moon, like the beginning. Obviously, Islam is, the new moon crescent.
Mm. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's interesting to think that he says, uh, hold on, where was that? Not a single grain it's got here in the darkness of the earth. It's like,
Or
but to
grain.
me,
Yeah, you can say grain. Yeah.
that's like the thought of the intention before you manifest the fruit. You know what I mean? Before you actually do the project. But just so it means like he also knows all of your little seedlings, that you want to burst for.
Oh, that's nice. I
You know
love
what I
that.
mean?
I didn't think about that part. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Before
No,
you
no, no,
even
no.
know them, maybe Allah knows them already. He knows all the seeds. You know what I mean? That we're
No, yeah, I get it.
able to birth.
That's actually really beautiful. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that from that perspective. Like I was looking at the verse from the perspective that we're discussing in terms of like the darkness is necessary for growth. That's a different angle. That's really interesting. That he's talking about his knowledge of what's unseen and even the seeds of your thought that are in the darknesses of your mind that
Yeah,
haven't even like given rise to anything yet. That's
yeah.
beautiful. That's a great reflection. I love that.
And what's the next bit? Or anything fresh or withered that is
Yeah,
not.
ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. And then so what's really cool too is like look at the very next verse. Read the beginning of the very next verse.
It is he who calls your souls back by night,
By
knowing what.
night.
Yeah,
Well, sorry, go ahead. You can finish.
that when you sleep.
Yeah, but think of the connections here that we started off talking about because it's all in the same. This is all the same chapter
To
because
replenish. Oh, like, yeah, you're going. It makes sense though, doesn't it? Because you're going
yeah,
back to the holy waters.
yeah,
You go.
right.
You're going into the collective unconscious, which, God willing, you're with God. Being replenished by Him, not fragmented, not all your seeds going everywhere else. And that's why, linking back to the conversation earlier, that's why I want to quit Instagram and TikTok, because honestly, it feels like when I go into the darkness, my soul is not always with God. It's feels like, yeah, like I'm having tugged, because
Mm.
when you think about it, right? Sorry, I know this is off tangent, but when you think about it,
No,
yeah, what is online relationships? Because it's not physical, it's in these ethers, it's in the unseen. You know what I mean? So all these, oh yeah, this person, think of how many people you've got on that little tablet there. And then all the different apps as well. I've got folders, one folder with Instagram, TikTok, in one folder. You open that one and you've got 1,000 people on that one, 400 people on that one that you're actively talking to. And then you're going to sleep to go back into the darkness with God, but you're not really. You're connecting with all the other stuff, honestly. And I think this is the problem with everyone has, like, everyone's got these, some symptoms or affliction or other, and yeah, and it's
no,
weird because
that's
obviously
interesting.
black screen as well, like all
Yeah,
these black screens everywhere, darkness. You know what I mean?
yeah, no,
Mm.
I do. That's
And
super interesting. Go
and
ahead.
Jin, they literally travel through these things, these
Hmm.
screens, these the unseen. Literally, I've got so many stories of it. That's why,
Subhanallah.
like, you get like static in your TV in like an old house that, there's no one's there for a while, and you get all these funny noises on your, I don't know, could be screens or electric devices. Like,
Hmm.
interesting.
This giving poltergeist. Have you ever seen a movie
Oh
Poltergeist?
yeah. I've never watched it. I don't
It's
need to.
I think it came through the TV in Poltergeist. I think that
Oh,
if I remember, it's an
mate,
old movie. Yeah, it's from like
there's
when I was a
truth
kid.
in that. There is truth in that, I'm telling you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, I think that's very fascinating though, like how how you connected like what we're talking about to the online stuff that we were talking about earlier. And I think that's how we're supposed to use the Quran. I think we're supposed to use the Quran to think about like our practical everyday issues. And here's another verse about sleep that I think is very interesting, and about how Allah takes the souls. And I would like to hear your thoughts on it because we talked about going back to Allah, right? So this
Mm.
verse is in uh 39:42. So 39:42, whenever you get to it, you can go ahead and read it.
Okay, you call me to disbelieve in God and to associate with him things of which
Wait,
I have.
I think you
Oh,
might be on the wrong one. Are you on
oh,
39?
oh no. I don't know how I done that. I swear I was
Bro, I
there.
do it all the time, trust me. It's easy to do.
39:42.
Yep.
Yeah. God takes souls at the time of death and the souls of the living while they sleep. He keeps hold of those whose death he has ordained and sends the others back until their appointed time. There truly are signs in this for those who reflect.
Yes. So you notice how it in that verse he says he keeps the ones that death is decreed and he sends the other back. He sends it back, almost implying like what you said about like being with Allah at that time. Like
Mm-mm.
he sends it back, right? So I think that's interesting, like connecting this with what we're studying about the story of Ibrahim when you put those verses together, right? How he spoke about the seed in the darknesses of the earth, or the grain in the darknesses of the earth, and then in the very next verse he said he yatawaffakum bil he collects you at night. So the word that's translated, I forget how they translate it there, but this word yatawaffa, it really means to collect something in full. That's the actual literal meaning of it is. So yatawaffakum bil he collects you in full at night. And here Allahu yatawaffa al-anfus, he collects the souls in full at the time of their death, and those that do not die in their sleep. فَيُمْسِكُ الَّتِي قَضَى عَلَيْهَا الْمَوْتِ, he keeps the ones that death is decreed upon. وَيُرْسِلُ الْأُخْرَى إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى, and he sends the others until the prescribed period. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, in that are signs for people who think or reflect. So in this is something we're supposed to think about and reflect on. How many people actually take time to like think about that? Like, so perhaps like that kind of supports like this overall idea that we're talking about in terms of like the night and the darkness kind of like being a time, not a bad time or a scary time, but a time when you actually go back to Allah. And perhaps that's why the darkness, the night covered Ibrahim, because
Mm.
going into this spiritual crisis, he needed to go into the womb of darkness to search for the light until he was reborn. But how does that, when you hear that verse, like from your studies, like the esoteric things that you've studied, like what are some like connections that brings to your mind? Do you remember
Uh,
anything like off the top of your head? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious because sometimes, like how you just was talking about earlier about.
yeah, my mind was honestly going somewhere else entirely, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Um,
Where was your mind going? I'm curious. I love your reflections.
um, well, first of all, thinking of how this sort of, I've never heard of it, the throngs, or maybe it's because it's a different translation to what I've heard before. What's this known as, this surah, the throngs?
Zoom, yeah, Zumar could be like the groups basically. That's why they say throngs. I think they translate it
Yeah,
throngs.
throngs. I was like, what is
I
that?
think they just try to give it a fancy name, but I think it's like groups basically.
Okay. And what is
Um,
it in the Arabic then with a Z? I'm just thinking if I can
Zumar,
see. Sumar.
Zumar, yeah, like
Okay.
Zumar, Zumar.
Oh, no, yeah,
I
I was
think
thinking of that, and then I was thinking of how number six, because in the Sufi, I I'm at a place where I really don't know what to do about esoteric astrological knowledge. Like I'm letting it go. I say that, but like it's still there. But yeah, I was thinking of how what we were talking about before in Ibraaheem 6 and how 6 pertains to Virgo, and Virgo is literally about like really applying like full comprehensive study to things, and it also links to your day, like your daily living, like your daily life and what you're doing, your routines. I was thinking of that
mm,
and how you mentioned that and how it links in, because there's a Sufi theory that the numbers are they go up by the zodiac wheel. So six, I've said this, so the six
interesting.
pertain to Virgo.
Mm,
I was just thinking of that really.
that's interesting. Hmm.
But
What's real? Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, thinking about, yeah, like just how it is. It's so difficult. This is like the crux. I feel like this is like the crux of everything, like everyone's questions and problems. And it's literally everything to do with the unseen, isn't it? And when we go to sleep, I'm very much a believer of like all illnesses or whatnot, they can be killed by sleep or like prolonged in your sleep. And how, like, well, it must be something to do with this. Because if
Mm,
you're with God when you sleep and He takes you, I don't know, I'd love to know more about when God says in more detail, if it ever says that, like what actually happens when He takes you, or how, I don't know. I'm just like personally
that's
thinking of how can I get that pure.
that's beautiful, actually. I think that that could be like a follow up, in our next study. We can go over that, but I will give you real quick a quick thought about that. So what's really interesting is let's go to chapter 3 real quick. Chapter 3, what verse is this? Chapter 3, verse verse 55. Chapter 3, verse 55. But I definitely think that would be a good follow up to the
Yeah,
study to discuss this more.
and I definitely have a question for you as well at the end. I'd love to ask for next week.
Absolutely, for sure, for sure. So this verse, go ahead and read it real quick.
What number again? Sorry.
It's chapter 3, verse 55.
Oh right, yeah. God said, Jesus, I will take your soul back and raise you up to me. I
Okay,
will
right
purify.
there. He said, so they're translating. So the word in Arabic is like he's telling Jesus, the word in Arabic is mutawaffika, mutawaffi, which is from the same root as the other verses, the other two that we just read. Yatawaffakum bil he takes you fully by night. And the other verse, which says Allahu yatawaffal anfus, that Allah collects or takes fully the souls. So this word here is the same from the same root word as those two verses, right? So he tells Jesus, "Inni mutawaffika, I will fully collect you, right? Warafi'uka ilayya, and raise you to me." So now, where some of the dispute comes in at like understanding what's the meaning here is some people believe that this means that okay, this verse shows that he caused Jesus to die, right? But then other people argue that no, because the word, if you look at this word in the Quran, it doesn't always indicate death, because in the verse that we just talked about, it indicates at the time of death or at the time of sleep,
Oh,
right? So so it doesn't necessarily mean that he caused him to die. So there's different ways that people look at this, right? But perhaps now from the angle that we're thinking about this in a more spiritual way, like we're not thinking about it like in a technically literal way. We're thinking of more spiritual and more poetic, like what's the deeper like philosophical implications that are being addressed in these different verses. Perhaps Jesus represents a lesson for us for what exactly happens when Allah fully collects a person or collects the soul. Because what was Jesus called? In another place, he was called Ruhun Min. He was called a spirit. He was called a Ruh, a spirit from him, right? And in another place in the Quran, when he talks about the creation of the human being, he says, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. I blew in him of my spirits,
Hmm.
right? So perhaps part of this idea of tawaffi that we find in these different verses, which is literally meaning like I said, they translate it sometimes as causing to die, but literally meaning to collect someone, which could be at the time of death or at the time of sleep, right? Perhaps the deeper idea is because the human being has blown into to them from his ruh, min ruhi. So perhaps when it talks about, because like in that verse in 39:42, the way that he speaks about it is like the soul is with Allah because he says, well, yursilul ukhra. He sends back the other one. So where is he sending it back from? If he's sending it back, it was somewhere, right? It seems like, and that somewhere doesn't have to be in a place the limited way that we think about it. But perhaps the meaning is that the part of us, like what is the part of us that's connected to Allah, is the ruh, right? Is
Yeah.
the spirit, not the nafs. The nafs is something different,
Mm.
right? But the ruh, right? So perhaps part of the process of tawaffi is the ruh going back to and reconnecting with the greater ruh, the
Mm.
greater spirit,
Oh
which is
yeah,
Allah.
100%.
You see what I'm saying? And then that's why he says, and this is just reflection. We want to study more, and think about it more. Like I said, we can follow up next week, inshallah, and study this more to see if this idea is supported. But this is just a reflection that, like, why does Allah tell us all these things about Jesus? Why does he tell us he's a spirit? Why does he tell us about the way that he was born? He was born by the breathing of the spirit. Is maybe to show us the idea of like how spirit functions, right? How the spirit goes back to Allah. Like maybe that's one of the wisdoms, that we get from the story of Jesus. Allah
Do
knows
you know?
best.
Yeah, I love that. I just thought of something. Obviously, he is the son of God, right? Son, Christians believe, actual son. No, I don't know, but son, but the son as well,
Right.
right? The son, and just coming back to what we were speaking about right at the beginning about Ibrahim's story, the star, the moon, the sun, right? And I've always thought that Jesus, peace be upon him, is like mankind's nafs manifestation of a pure nafs, as
Mm.
opposed to Muhammad, peace be upon him, which maybe it's the same, I don't know, but like I've often thought of him having more of like a pure moon for some reason, like the
Mm.
shadow work or so. I don't know how it manifests or how, but yeah, like you were saying before about Jesus being an example to us. I wonder whether God left us with him and does like exalt him in the Quran because there's a lot to learn in how he actually acted. But I know we
Mhm.
as Muslims we say the same for Muhammad, like, obviously, but
No,
I don't.
I get what you're saying, and I think you're onto something. So there's another verse that I think supports what you're talking about. It's in 42. Let me see.
And why
On my,
people who do connect with Jesus, peace upon him, can, I believe, get to the light, like can actually become awakened and like fully with God. I truly
yeah,
believe some people can do that within, not even within Islam.
yeah, I agree with you. No, I agree with you. I think there's, I think there's many paths to Allah. I don't think the path you can limit the paths to Allah. And even he says in one verse in the end of Surah Al-Ankabut, he says, وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. And those who strive hard in our cause, we will guide them to our paths, plural.
Wow.
So I do
Mm,
think I think you're onto something there.
love
Yeah.
that.
But there's another verse that directly connects to Jesus that I think you would find very interesting in terms of that idea, right? That Jesus is there to be an example, right?
Mm.
So let me find this verse real quick for you. Yep. So this verse is super interesting. This is in 43:59. And we're going to connect this verse with another verse. So 43:59, and then we're going to connect that to another verse in chapter 4. But let's read 43:59 first. What does 43:59 say?
Um, but he is only a servant we favored and made an example for the children of Israel.
Okay. Now the wording there is we favored, right?
Mm.
But but like the literal meaning of it in Arabic is an'amna alayhi. An'amna, that we bestowed our blessings upon.
Right.
And amna, it's the same, almost the same exact wording as Surah Al-Fatiha,
That's what I was going
where
to
we
say.
say,
I was thinking
yeah,
of that.
Surat al-Ladina an'amta alayhim, the
Yeah.
path of those that you bestowed your blessings upon. So that means that we're in Surah Al-Fatiha, we're asking
Oh,
Allah. Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
so we're lit. Oh, that means that means like loads of Muslims will hate me for saying this, but like it means God knows best. Maybe this is wrong, but in this analysis, it would point to potentially when we are saying, "Please guide us to the straight path every day." It's the path that Jesus was walking because Jesus is among those that was on the straight
was
path. That's what it
was on the
proves.
straight path. Exactly.
So
Yes.
we can learn how to get onto the Sirat al Mustaqim through Jesus, is one it.
Yes. He's definitely one of our examples. And in 469, in chapter 4, verse 69, look at 469 real quick. That's maybe why they translate it like that. Maybe they were
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
like
they don't.
they don't want you
Mm.
to that's I don't know about that one.
469, you say.
Yeah, 469. Oh man. Read 469 real quick.
Whoever obeys God and the messenger will be among those he has blessed. The messengers, the truthful, those who bear witness to the truth, and the righteous. What excellent companions these are.
Okay, what's interesting is it's the wording of those who he has blessed. It's the same wording in Arabic. And amallahu alayhim. And see how they translated it differently when they talked about Jesus, they said,
Oh, wow.
yeah, they said the ones you favored, we favored him. And here
Interesting.
they said blessed, right?
Mm,
It's almost like in the translation, I'm not saying they did it intentionally, I don't know, but it's almost like in the translation, they try to downplay
mm,
the fact that Jesus was specifically mentioned. And I believe I would have to look closer to make sure I'm remembering this right. But I believe, if I recall correctly, that Jesus is the only one that Allah specifically mentioned, like individually, that he was one of those, and amna alayhi, that we
mm.
bestowed our blessings upon. See, because this verse is plural, that whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, then those will be with who Allah bestowed His blessings upon of the prophets, etc. These are plural, so that shows that when we say صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, the path of those who you bestowed your blessings upon, right? That could be plural, that could be many different examples, right? But specifically as an individual, as far as I recall, no, there might be one or two more. I'm gonna have to look to see.
Yeah,
But
let's check that.
yeah, I'll check that inshallah. But for sure, Jesus, right? For sure, Jesus is one of those that are specifically mentioned as being from those who Allah bestowed His blessings upon. We bestowed our blessings upon, right? So when we say "Sirata al-ladina an'amta alayhim," the
Mm,
path of those you bestowed your blessings upon, one of them is Jesus, and it makes sense because we're told so much about him in the Quran. We're told
mm,
about him being a ruh, a kalima, a word. We're told all these different stories. What's the point of all these different stories? Perhaps it's what you said. It's to learn how to live the life of the spirit. Like he
mm,
was, like Allah referred to him as a spirit. Like when he talks about creating human beings, he references nafaktu fihi min ruhi. I blew in him of my spirit, part of my spirit, from my spirit. But with Jesus, he said he is a spirit.
right. I need to know what verse that is, please.
Oh yeah, I can look that up for you, not a problem. And
Okay.
then, because we got a few minutes left, so if you wanna, you said you had a question at the end. So after I give you this verse, if you wanna jump in with that question, we can
Yeah.
see.
Um, that's interesting just because yeah, like there's lots of questions now. Like I
No, it's
wonder,
okay.
when Christians come on YouTube, and say, I've now turned to Christianity because I saw Jesus, and I wonder what that's about. Do you know what I mean? Because if that's a true thing, a lot of Muslims will say that was a jinn, right? But then what if it's not? And what if I have the belief actually that some that oh it links to our first call of these ones, which was like how we realized that every single person has their own way about them and we can worship in particular ways, like that's for you.
Hmm.
um I think that everyone needs a slightly different way of getting onto the path of Surat al-Mustaqim. And I think that some people need Christianity or Jesus instead. Like it just works for them and their ruh, or their
It just
makeup.
fits. Yeah, it fits them more. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I agree. Like I think everyone has their own path. Like not every path wasn't meant for every person. There's many ways to reach God, to reach Allah. Now I feel
100%.
you on that.
Do you
Oh,
want
that
my
verse is 4:171. So chapter 4, verse 171.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this question is pretty deep and personal, but I'm sure like you might relate. I don't know, but yeah, what I'm struggling with these days is right. I know that all the struggle in this lifetime is okay because of inshallah Jannah, right? You meet your Lord, and hopefully it'll be worth if you do the right things and whatnot, and you're with God and you strive to be a good person, blah blah blah. Then it will all count for something because you'll have that ultimate bliss and peace when you die, right? And that's essentially why we're all doing this life. Like if we're Muslim, it's what we want to do. But then I struggle with the question of, does that mean we can't live an easeful, abundant life in this lifetime, as in like having health, being able to travel to Greece and get a five-star hotel and
Right.
have a family and experience great things, because just like the last 10 years for me have been fucking struggle. and I'm getting really tired of it. So I was just would love to explore, like, yeah, what you thought or what you have found before in the Quran that leads you to some conclusion around that, or what do you think? Like, do you think that there is a way? Like, because I'm so like, it feels like, yeah, I feel like I have guilt around wanting to earn more money or wanting to experience luxuries and, wanting to find a way to buy a nice car for my family. You know what I mean? I struggle to know where the line is, or or whether God, I don't know, like,
Yeah, I
does
think I
that
get
make
what you're
sense? I'm
saying.
just confused around the whole thing. Like, surely God don't want us to be unwell and struggle just to.
No, I don't think so. I don't think like struggling is necessary for like to be a spiritual person or to be connected to Allah. And what I mean by necessary in the sense of like you have to like you can't seek to have an easy life. You can't seek to have nice things. Or if you do seek to have nice things, that means you're going away from Allah, like it's either or. I don't think that's the case. I think if you have the ability to like in the Quran, Allah says, Yuridu Allahu bikum al-yusra wa la yuridu bikum al-usr. He says Allah wants for you ease and he does not want for you difficulty.
Mm,
So I don't think like Allah wants us to be in difficulty. So I think like some of this goes to like the way that personally I think about Allah. So I don't think about like when he speaks about like these different like in the Quran, for example, when it speaks about the different struggles and stuff that we go through, I don't think he's necessarily saying that in the sense of like he's just like arbitrarily sitting somewhere and being like, oh, you're gonna go like I don't know if anybody will get this reference, but like the old Oprah Winfrey show, you gotta book, and you gotta book, and you gotta like you get a struggle, you get a struggle. I
mm,
think everything is cause and effect. So I think when you think about Allah, how I think about Allah, I think Allah is life, al-hayy. He is the living. Like he
right.
is life itself. He is consciousness itself, from which everything else arises. So I think through that process of like the unfolding of consciousness, there are strict laws of cause and effect which give rise to the things that we see. So when we go through different hardships, right, or different struggles, I think those things just come from just the laws of cause and effect, right, of whatever chain of events led up to that particular thing happening. So I don't think it's in the difficulty itself or um it's in the ease itself that really makes you as a person. I think it's your response to it. Either way, because either way, a person could experience times of ease, and that could be the thing that makes them not spiritual.
Yeah,
Because and vice versa. You can experience times of hardship, and that makes them not spiritual. Just because they experience hardship, like I know a couple people that I'm working with, and they're going through some different things, and that's not making them more spiritual. It's
yeah.
making it harder for them to be spiritual. So
Mm,
part of the work that we're doing is like trying to help them like separate between like who they are and like how they feel about themselves as a person versus some of the struggles that they went through. So I think like this idea that we have almost that we have to punish ourselves. In fact, there's a hadith where a person had I forget all the details. It's been a while since I read it, but I think it was something like they vowed to fast and never break their fast. They vowed to like never sit in the shade. They vowed to never get married, something like that. And in the end of the hadith, the Prophet tells them or says about them, "Inna Allah an ta'vibi hada bi nafsihi laghani." Allah is not in need of this person torturing themselves,
mm,
right? So I think like this idea that we have to like almost punish ourselves, that's not. I don't think that's Quranic. I don't think
mm,
that's I don't think that's supported in the Hadith. I think that's just an idea that we've internalized from somewhere. So that doesn't mean that we won't go through struggles, but those struggles, if you think about them from a Quranic standpoint, are just part of the natural cycle of life of cause and effect because he says وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. He said, those are the days which we rotate amongst people, right? We rotate the days. Like some days you're up, some days you're down. Some days you're
Right.
good, some days you're not. We rotate the days. So the way he speaks about it in the Quran is like, this is like just an ever recurring, like cyclical thing that we go through these different periods of like up and down, you know, periods of ease and periods of hardship. So that's a natural part of just like living in this life. In another place, he says, "In takunu ta'lamuna فإنهم يعلمون كما تعلمون." He says, if you are experiencing pain, they too also are experiencing pain. وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. But you hope from Allah what they don't hope. So in this verse, he showed that pain is an equal experience between people that are quote unquote good people and people that are quote unquote
Mm.
bad people. If you are experiencing pain, they too are experiencing pain.
Right.
So don't think that pain only happens if you're good or it only happens if you're bad. It happens to everyone. But
Mm.
the distinguishing factor he gave in that verse is وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَرْجُونَ. But you hope from Allah what they don't hope. So it's not the pain itself that's the distinguishing factor because that's just a universal human experience. It's the response to it and like what we learn from it. And that kind of goes back to
Right.
that connects to the whole topic that we're talking about, which is the idea of embracing the darkness, looking at the darkness as being like a spiritual mother. That when you
Mm.
face moments of darkness, thinking about yourself as almost like an embryo in the embryonic stage of growth. And that might be something we continuously come back to. It's not
Mm.
like we go through that process one time, then we're spiritually reborn and then it's over with. It might be something that we always come back to these times of darkness.
No, it makes
Does that
sense.
make sense?
Thanks. Yeah, yeah. Because it's like even every time we birth something new or we start a new phase in our life, there's often a period of like darkness just
Of
before. I don't
dark.
know if you've noticed
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
pullback before you go straight forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
For sure. So I don't know. That's how I've come to think about it over my time being Muslim. So hopefully that's helpful to think
Thank
about like
you.
that. Inshallah. Well, with that, I think that's a good place to end on, inshallah. I'll see you
Yeah.
next week. And I'll actually stop the recording now.
Okay.
If I remember how to do it. Okay. Oh, no, that's not it. Boom. Stop.